This next one has several components to it. It's called the full keto. It has different ways you can do the full keto. So I'm going to talk to you about the first option, okay? And that's gonna your percentages are going to kind of fluctuate a little bit. And basically, she's wanting you to see what you need for your body. So I like that a lot because ultimately, no diet is going to fit any one person the same. So no way of eating is going to be one way for one person and everybody else can follow that journey. Everybody's got to find out what works for them. So in this one, in the first part of this full keto, and you want to make sure that you change this after you're fully fat adapted. So make sure you've been on a keto, a classic keto, maybe a pump keto, for at least 21 days, 3 weeks, before you change over to this, because we want to make sure we have all that yuck, toxic stuff out of your body, so that you're putting in good, healthy carbs when you do have carbs. So in this one, you're going to have about 60 to 75% of your calories coming from fat. Your protein is going to stay about 20%, and so that ratio of your fat is going to be affected with your carbs. So if you have the 75% of fat, you're going to keep it at around 5% for your carbs. But if you go up to 20%, if you go down to 60% of fat that you're having, you're going to want to increase your carbs a little bit, up to maybe 20% or so. So you see how those ratios are going to change, okay? So it's just really important that you don't decide to have 75% fat and then 20% carbs, because that's going to negate everything that you're trying to do. So just make sure your ratios stay right at 100%, however you're planning to do that. This is good for people that maybe don't have any hormone imbalances, that are already kind of healthy, but just want to follow this way of eating. And then people who might still be struggling with their blood sugar. I didn't have to do this. I did struggle with my blood sugar probably the first 2 weeks, and trying to get that regulated with my medicine. So that was kind of a challenge, but I was able to kind of do that. So this might be helpful for people that realize, ooh, I need to have a little more carbs until I can get my blood sugar in a good healthy range. So the next part of this is the adapted fat burner. And adapted is a great word. Think about what that means. What is being adapted to something? That means your body can acclimate and can do what it needs to do to be able to burn fat for fuel. So that happens usually a good ways into your keto journey, and that way you can add a little more carbs in. I want to go back to the explanation in full keto, because it doesn't mean that you just decide I'm gonna eat 60% of my calories from fat, 20% of my calories from protein, and 20% of my calories from carbs every night. You might do that once a week or twice a week. So you can change that up as you see fit. So the full keto is where you might just do that once a week, maybe twice at most. So the next one that I'm going to talk about is the adaptive fat burner. And again, that is where your body is using fat as fuel. It's no longer wanting to just use sugar as fuel, because it's not used to having that. It's not become adapted to using sugar as fuel. You have transferred your body over to using fat as your fuel source. So this is when you can introduce a little more carbs. So again, you can keep those ratios almost the same as full keto, where you have the 60% fat, the 20% protein, 20% carbs, but you might do that more than once or twice a week. Maybe you do it 2 or 3 times a week, and then go back to a regular classic keto for the rest of the week. It's, some people call it carb cycling. She calls it carb ups. But it's basically just cycling in a few carbs, so that you can still have those things. And I will talk about what kind of carbs are good to have. So we don't want to just go back to eating cupcakes and candy bars and bread and sandwiches and that kind of thing. We want this to be a lifestyle. We want to change and have a healthy way of eating. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. So this might be good for people, again, that are already super healthy and just really want to use fat as a fuel for their bodies every day. And then she has the daily fat burner. Basic concept is the same as full keto, except for your carb ups or your carb cycling is happening every night. So that's an option once you get fat adapted. That's super important. So one of the key things, though, to remember, and I've read this not just in her book but in many, many, many places, is that if you're going to introduce carbs into your diet, into your ketogenic diet, it's better to do that at night on your evening meal. Eat your breakfast full fat, moderate protein, low carb. Eat your lunch full fat, moderate protein, low carb. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about why it's good to do that. Why is it good to keep your carbs low in the day, and if you are going to do carb ups, to do that at night? Well, one, when we wake up in the morning, we're already in fat burning mode. Our body is ready to plow through and burn the fat that's already there. Our cortisol is high, and a lot of times that's when, if anybody has trouble with their fasting glucose, that's usually when it's the highest. So our body is working really hard to get that glucose down. So it's trying to get all that glucose out of its cells. So if we just go and have a bowl of cereal for breakfast, we're just putting more sugar into our body and making our bodies work harder to get that glucose out. And then from my experience, anytime I had a very carby breakfast, I want a carby snack. And then I want a carby lunch. And then I want a carby afternoon snack. And then I want to eat all day long. Whereas if I eat a good fat adapted meal, like eggs with bacon and sour cream and cooked in butter and maybe a little bit of cheese, I'm pretty full, and I'm not even really ready for lunch until a little bit later. And then the same for lunch. So I stay full. I'm not snacking all day. So even though those calories might be a little bit higher than what you would have if you were eating a bowl of cereal, I'm not eating all day. So that those meals are sustaining me. So one, I'm not eating as much. Two, I'm not wasting my time trying to find something to eat and trying to find snacks, and I just feel better. I have more energy, and I'm not constantly thinking about food, and I can go hours and hours and hours and realize, oh, I need to eat. So that's one really good thing. The other thing is that if you want to do some carb ups at night, maybe your body's worked real hard to get those to use your fat as energy, and maybe you want to give it a little bit of glucose at night to let it, because our body does need glucose. It will make glucose if it can't get it through external ways. But if you give it a little bit, then it doesn't have to work so hard. So that might be another reason you want to do a carb up at night. And for women especially, our hormones are just a little bit different than men, like I said before. And so sometimes a carb up can help keep some issues that might pop up because of low carb, such as thyroid and cold hands and feet, which kind of go with thyroid. Just some issues that might pop up. So so those are the different profiles that she has in her book. I'd highly recommend her book. I love it. But I'd also highly recommend of lots of other ketogenic books, like the Keto Clarity I just finished. It's really good. And Why We Get Fat, Good Calories, Bad Calories, the Obesity Code, and something else I'll talk about a little bit later on, the Complete Guide to Intermittent Fasting. So all of those books are really good, but I'm really, really pleased with what I've been reading in The Keto Diet by Leanne Vogel. If y'all have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. If I can't, I can find somebody that might know. So thanks for watching today. I know this was a lot of information, and I hope y'all have a great day. Thanks.